Nah. The day my father-in-law walked into my hotel lobby and demanded the presidential suite, I was standing 20 feet away behind a potted ficus tree, watching him snap his fingers at my front desk manager. He didn't recognize me. Why would he? The last time he'd seen me, I was 26 years old, crying in the driveway of his house with 2 garbage bags of clothes and my husband's wedding ring still on my finger. That was 8 years ago. I had shorter hair then. Cheaper shoes. A different last name. Now I had a different everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Nora. I married into the Whitfield family when I was 24, full of the kind of hope that only people who grew up without much of it tend to carry around. My husband, I'll call him Patrick, was the middle child of 3. His older brother Sterling was the golden one, the one who went to Yale and came back with a finance degree and a vocabulary full of words like leverage and portfolio. His younger sister Bethany was the baby, protected from every inconvenience like she was made of something breakable. And then there was Patrick. Sweet, quiet Patrick who liked cooking and hated confrontation, and had somehow ended up working at his father's commercial printing company, despite spending 4 years studying architecture. His father, I'll call him Raymond, was the kind of man who filled every room he entered. Not because he was charismatic exactly, but because he was loud. He had opinions about everything: the right way to load a dishwasher, the right neighborhood to live in, the right woman for his son to have married. That last one, I figured out quickly, was not me. I never understood exactly what I'd done wrong. I grew up in rural Tennessee, which Raymond mentioned approximately once every gathering, always framed as a gentle observation. Nora's not used to places like this. Nora probably didn't have much exposure to. He never finished those sentences. He didn't have to. His wife, Patrick's mother, I'll call her Marguerite, was quieter, but no less effective. She had a gift for the kind of warmth that came with conditions. She'd hug me at Christmas and then say, in the same breath, "You know, Patrick's friend Charlotte from college is doing so well." Did Patrick mention her? She's in real estate now, very successful. She always said it looking just past my ear, like I was a smudge. She was too polite to mention directly. For 4 years, I tried. I made her recipes, I remembered her friends' names. I laughed at Raymond's stories even when I'd heard them 3 times before. I smiled through dinners where Sterling talked about his bonus and Bethany talked about her social life, and nobody asked me a single question. Then I got pregnant. And I thought, this is it. This is the thing that changes everything. We're having a baby. They'll finally have a reason to welcome me. I lost the pregnancy at 11 weeks. Patrick held my hand in the hospital. He cried with me in the car. But when we told his family, Raymond nodded slowly and said, "These things happen. Probably for the best, to wait until you're both more established." He was looking at Patrick when he said it, but I felt it land in my chest like something physical. Marguerite sent flowers. The card said, "Thinking of you both during this time. P.S. Patrick, please call your father about the Hendricks account." I kept that card for a long time, not out of sentimentality. The marriage fell apart the way most marriages fall apart. Slowly, then all at once. Patrick wasn't cruel, he was just absent in the way that mattered most. When his family needed him, he showed up. When I needed him, he got quiet. He loved me, I think, in the way people love things they've grown accustomed to, but can't quite prioritize. The divorce was his idea, technically, but I'd been building toward it for 2 years without admitting it to myself. We were sitting at the kitchen table on a Tuesday night in January, and he said, "I don't think this is working," and I said, "No, it's not," and that was almost all of it. What came after was worse. Raymond had a lawyer friend. Patrick suddenly had a lawyer. I had savings and a public defender-level understanding of family law. The proceedings were civil on paper and something else entirely in reality. Nothing dramatic. Raymond was too careful for dramatic. But there was pressure. Suggestions that I take the settlement and be grateful. Implication, never stated, that if I made things difficult, things would get more difficult for me in return. I took the settlement. It wasn't enough, but it was done. Raymond called me the week after everything was finalized. He said, "I hope you find what you're looking for, Nora." He said my name like it was a parking ticket. Then he said, "I think you always knew this family wasn't quite the right fit for you." And then he hung up. I sat on the floor of my empty apartment, I'd moved to Chicago where I had one friend and zero history, and I thought, okay, watch what I do with this. Here's what nobody tells you about starting over at 26 with a settlement check that barely covers first and last month's rent. It is brutal and it is clarifying. I got a job as a front desk associate at a mid-range hotel. I had no hospitality experience, but I was organized, I was polite under pressure, and I had spent 4 years perfecting the skill of making people feel welcomed when I was not. That turned out to be useful. I worked. I watched. I asked questions of everyone I could. My general manager, a woman named Florence who wore the same 3 blazers in rotation and had the sharpest eye for operational waste I'd ever encountered, saw something in me that I hadn't fully seen in myself yet. She moved me to assistant manager within 18 months. I took every certification, every course, every training that the company offered. I slept 6 hours a night for 2 years and spent the rest of my time learning how hotels actually worked. Not just the front of the house, but the financing, the contracts, the ownership structures. I also saved, aggressively. I ate lunch at my desk. I had one streaming subscription. I found a mentor through a hospitality industry organization, a retired hotel executive named Bernard who'd built and sold 2 boutique properties. And I paid for those coffee meetings with the only currency I had, showing up early and being worth his time. Bernard connected me to an SBA loan program I hadn't known existed. He introduced me to a small investors group that focused specifically on minority-owned hospitality businesses. 3 years of coffee meetings, 2 years of loan applications, 1 rejected proposal, and 1 sleepless revision later, I had enough to acquire a struggling 40-room boutique property in a transitional neighborhood on Chicago's northwest side. That hotel is now consistently rated in the top 5 boutique hotels in the city. We've been featured in 2 travel publications. Last year, I acquired a second property. I did not do any of this overnight. I did not do it from savings alone. I did it the way people who don't have family money do it. Grinding and borrowing and learning from every mistake and getting back up. Every time I wanted to stop, I heard Raymond's voice saying, "I hope you find what you're looking for, Nora," and I found something else to do instead of stopping. I never contacted Patrick's family again. I assumed the reverse was equally true. I assumed wrong. The booking came through our corporate account system 6 weeks ago, a reservation for 3 rooms, a junior suite and 2 standard deluxes, under the name Whitfield, party of 5, checking in for a long weekend. I saw it on a Tuesday morning and I stood very still for approximately 30 seconds. Then I called my front desk manager, a sharp 23-year-old named Kezia, and I told her I wanted to be notified when the Whitfield party arrived. I didn't explain why. Kezia didn't ask. She's good like that. They arrived on a Friday afternoon. I got the text from Kezia at 2:17 p.m. Your 3 o'clock is here. Heads up. The older gentleman is being a lot. I walked to the edge of the lobby and stood behind the large planter near the elevator bank. This is a useful position. You can observe the front desk without being seen from it, which occasionally comes in handy when I want to read a situation before entering it. Raymond looked older, heavier. He was wearing a blazer that was slightly too tight across the shoulders, and he was using a tone of voice with Kezia that I recognized immediately. The measured, pleasant condescension of a man who believes service staff should be grateful for his presence. Marguerite stood slightly behind him, looking at her phone. She had the same posture I remembered, slightly turned away, as though plausible deniability was a physical stance. Sterling was there too, with a woman I didn't recognize. His wife, presumably, and Bethany scrolling through her own phone, occasionally glancing up to nod at whatever her father was saying. No Patrick. That was notable. Raymond was, apparently, unhappy with the room assignment. He was explaining to Kezia, slowly, with exaggerated patience, that he had expected something different. Something more commensurate with the Whitfield reputation. Did she know who he was? He had contacts in the Chicago hospitality industry. He was a very loyal customer who spent significantly on travel, and he was frankly surprised that a property of this caliber was unable to accommodate a simple request to upgrade his suite. Kezia, for her part, was handling it with the grace of someone who has handled exactly this before. Calm, professional, apologetic sounding without actually apologizing for anything. I watched for about 3 minutes. Then I straightened my jacket, walked across the lobby, and said, "Mr. Whitfield." Welcome. The effect was interesting. Raymond turned toward my voice with the automatic smile of someone expecting management-level deference. The smile arrived, did its work for approximately 1.5 seconds, and then something else moved across his face. Confusion first, then the specific discomfort of a person trying to locate a memory they prefer not to find. Marguerite looked up from her phone. Her expression skipped confusion entirely and went straight to a careful blankness. Sterling just stared. Nora, Raymond said finally. The way he said it was almost the same as the last time, like a parking ticket, except this time there was something underneath it. Something he was working to keep out of his voice. It's good to see you, I said, which was not exactly true but was professionally appropriate. I understand you had some questions about your accommodations. I'd be happy to walk you through what we have available. You... Marguerite started then stopped. Then, you work here. I own it, I said. The silence that followed was the quietest moment I've ever experienced in a hotel lobby, and hotel lobbies are professionally calibrated for a certain volume of ambient noise. I let it sit for a moment, not to be cruel, or maybe a little to be human. Then I said, why don't we step into my office? I think it might be easier to talk there. Raymond recovered faster than I expected. By the time we were seated in my office, Kezia had brought water, bless her. He was doing the thing where he reframes a disadvantage into a compliment. Well, this is quite something, Nora. You've clearly done well for yourself. He said done well for yourself with the particular emphasis of someone who considers your achievement a pleasant surprise rather than an expectation. Thank you, I said pleasantly. What brings you to Chicago? This is where it got interesting. They were here, Raymond explained, because of a real estate transaction. Sterling's company had been looking at a commercial property in the River North area, a small mixed-use building that had recently come onto the market. They'd been in talks with the seller's representative for several weeks. It was, Raymond said, an excellent opportunity. Sterling had done his research. The numbers were strong. He was telling me this in a chatty, catching-up way. Filling silence, I let him. The building at 1140 North? I said when he paused. Raymond blinked. You know it? I sold it, I said, 18 months ago. It was my second acquisition. I held it for 2 years before the offer came in. Another silence, different quality than the first one. Sterling leaned forward very slightly. That building is. The current asking price is. I know what it sold for, I said. I sold it. Marguerite set down her water glass. Nora, Raymond said, and now his voice had shifted into something I recognized from a different context. The voice he used when he was calibrating, reassessing, deciding how to approach something. It sounds like you've built something quite significant. I've worked hard, I said, which is the truest sentence I know. He nodded, he smiled. And then he said the thing I had not expected but probably should have. He said, I always believed in you. I want you to know that. Whatever happened between you and Patrick, that was between the two of you. Our family always had a lot of respect for he paused, selecting your tenacity. I looked at him for a moment. Mr. Whitfield, I said. The last time we spoke, you told me this family wasn't the right fit for me. And you hung up. His smile didn't move exactly, but something behind it did. People say things, he said. In difficult times, I think we all said things we didn't entirely mean. I didn't say anything, I said. You called me, you did the talking. Marguerite was looking at her water glass like it contained very important information. Nora, Raymond said. And now the pleasantness was thinning just slightly at the edges. I'm wondering if we might be able to put the past behind us. Sterling is very serious about this property. And given your experience in the Chicago market, your obvious connections, I wonder if there might be an opportunity for some kind of advisory arrangement. We would compensate you fairly, of course. I took a breath. I let it out slowly. I appreciate that, I said. I do, but I don't think that's something I'm in a position to pursue. We'd be quite generous, Raymond said. I don't doubt that, I said. Nora. His voice shifted one more time into something almost paternal. You were part of this family. Whatever happened, That doesn't disappear. Family is family. And there it was. The word I'd spent 4 years trying to earn membership in and 8 years learning to live without. Mr. Whitfield, I said, your family was very clear about how it felt about me. I spent a long time trying to change that. Eventually, I understood that some things are not mine to change. I paused. I genuinely hope the Chicago trip is productive. Kezia will make sure your rooms are excellent. Raymond looked at me for a long moment. The calculation behind his eyes was almost visible. Whether to push, whether to soften, whether there was another angle. He was not a man accustomed to being at a disadvantage, and I watched him realize in real time that he was at one. We appreciate your hospitality, he said finally, which in context was almost funny. They checked out a day early. Before they left, Bethany came to the front desk and asked to speak with me. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. We sat in 2 chairs near the lobby window, and she was quiet for a moment, looking at her hands. I didn't know, she said finally. When you and Patrick were divorcing, I didn't know what my dad said to you. I found out later. She looked up. I should have called you. I thought about it. I looked at her. She was 28 now, maybe 29. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with travel. Why didn't you? I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Because it would have caused problems, she said. With my dad. And I wasn't ready for that. I nodded slowly. I understand. I'm sorry, she said. I know that's late. It is, I said, but I hear you. We didn't hug, we didn't exchange numbers. She walked back toward the elevator where her family was waiting, and I walked back toward my office where my morning was waiting, and that felt like the right amount of closure. Not cinematic, not complete. Just the right size for what it actually was. I've thought a lot about what I want people to take from this, if anything. I don't think my story is about revenge. I know it sounds like it is, and I'd be lying if I said there wasn't some satisfaction in that lobby moment, in watching Raymond's face do the thing it did when he understood the position he was in. I'm human, I felt it. But what I actually feel most of the time is something quieter. I feel like I spent years trying to belong to something that was never going to let me in. And the years I spent building something of my own, those years were harder and lonelier and more expensive in every sense of the word. But they were mine. Every decision was mine. Every mistake was mine to fix. Every success landed somewhere real. Raymond called me a poor fit. What he meant was that I was from somewhere smaller, with less money and fewer connections, and that no amount of effort on my part was going to change the story he'd already written about who I was. He was right that I was a poor fit. He was wrong about why that mattered. The right fit, it turned out, was something I had to build myself, room by room. And the lobby is beautiful. I spent a lot of time thinking about what Raymond said to me the day our divorce was finalized. I hope you find what you're looking for, Nora. He said it like a dismissal wrapped in a blessing. Like he was doing me a favor by letting me go. At the time, sitting on the floor of an empty apartment with a check that barely covered 2 months of rent, I didn't have words for what I felt. It wasn't just hurt. It was something colder than that. It was the moment I understood that some people have already decided who you are before you've had a single chance to show them. What I know now, 8 years later, is this. The way people treat you is almost never really about you. Raymond looked at me and saw a girl from rural Tennessee with no family money and no connections, and he made a calculation. He decided I wasn't worth the investment of being truly known. That calculation said more about the limits of his imagination than it ever said about mine. But here's the thing about being underestimated that nobody tells you when you're in the middle of it. It is genuinely painful, and the pain is real and you're allowed to feel it fully. I did. I sat with it for longer than was comfortable. What I refused to do was let it become the story I told myself about what I was capable of. That took work. Not inspiration. Work. Florence, my first general manager, didn't see potential in me because I walked in radiating confidence. She saw it because I showed up every single day and asked better questions than I had the day before. Bernard didn't mentor me because I had a great pitch. He invested his time because I honored his time first. The SBA loan didn't come through because I was lucky. It came through because I had been rejected once, revised everything, and came back sharper. Every step of what I built was a direct consequence of choices I made, most of them unglamorous, many of them exhausting. And Raymond's cruelty, I think about this a lot, was also a choice. Every dismissal, every condescending phone call, every careful sentence designed to remind me of my place. Those were decisions. And decisions compound the same way investments do. His decision to treat me as disposable freed me from a situation that would have kept me small. It forced me into the only conditions under which I could actually become who I am. That's not something I'm grateful to him for. But it is something I've made peace with. What I want for anyone listening to this, anyone who has been told, in words or in silence, that they don't quite fit, that they're not quite enough, that they should be grateful for whatever small space they've been offered, is this: the people who dismiss you are not the authority on what you're capable of. They are only the authority on what they're willing to see. Intelligence isn't what got me through the last 8 years. I know people smarter than me who never built a thing. What got me through was the decision, made over and over again on difficult mornings, to keep going anyway. To learn one more thing. To ask one more question. To not let one man's verdict become my sentence. Bethany said she was sorry it was late. I told her I heard her. I meant it. Because the other thing I've learned is that holding on to bitterness requires energy I'd rather spend somewhere else. Letting it go doesn't mean what happened was acceptable. It means I've chosen where to put my attention. And my attention these days is on the lobby. It is always full of people. And it is beautiful.